Okay, so we're going to label this as unit 6.0. It's kind of like a pre-unit thing. Okay, and you guys are going to need to put this in your notebooks. Okay, so that you will need to like staple it in or just place it in your notebook because I will check this. Okay, so what we're going to be working on for this next unit is something called translations. Okay, and it's basically what happens when you take a shape and you move it. Okay, so the first thing we're going to look at is literally, these are just called translations. So these first ones are translations. And it's basically, we are going to take some shapes and we are going to move them. So the way we do that is you take your piece of patty paper, okay, and we are going to put it on top of my picture here, and you're going to trace this picture. Okay, so trace this picture with your pencil or pen, doesn't really matter. Make sure that you put the corner points really dark, okay? So make sure that you get those corner points really good because those are going to be really important, okay? So after you trace it, you can move it off to the side, okay? Then I also want you to, we're going to make an arrow saying that this is how, this was pointing up, okay? So I want you to make an arrow so if you turn it around or something, you know like which way is pointing up. Now what we're going to do is you're going to take your ruler and we are going to follow our instructions. So this says we are going to move this picture 1/2 inch down and 1 inch to the left. Now make sure that when you're using your ruler, you're not using the one that says cm, that means centimeter. Okay, we're using the side that says inches, inch. Okay, now you also have to figure out where are we going to move this from? Where should I be measuring from? Should I measure from the top or the left or the bottom or the right? It really doesn't matter. You just have to pick one, okay? So I'm going to say I'm going to move from the bottom, okay? So first thing I'm going to do is move 1/2 inch down. So use my ruler, and from the bottom, we're going to measure 1/2 inch down, and I just want you to put a dot. So 1/2 inch down, put a dot. Then from that dot, you're going to move 1 inch to the left. So put at the 1 and put a dot. Okay. Now, since I picked to move from the bottom, okay, you're going to take your picture that we traced and you're going to make sure that it's still lining up. And I'm going to put, since I moved from the bottom dot, I'm going to line up that bottom dot right there. Then your patty paper, you basically just want to set this down and we're going to try to make these dots at the corner really dark so it literally goes through the paper. Okay, see how, so like poke through the paper. Okay, and you're just going to make the 4 dots. So you're going to have to just press really hard so it goes through the paper. And kind of just hold it in place with your fingers. And then, like, obviously I didn't make mine very dark because it didn't go through the paper. So keep like pushing through your paper with your pen or your pencil. Sometimes some pencils work and some don't, and I really don't understand why. So just do your best to make a dot, and you literally are going to go like through this paper. It's pretty thin, but still. So once you've gone through your paper, you should end up with a little shape that looks like this on your paper. Then you take your ruler and just connect the dots. Okay, so you're going to take the ruler and connect the dots. If you happen to have colored pencils at home or in your backpack or something, colored pencils are really nice for this unit. If you don't have any, I have some that you can borrow, but it is going to be helpful if you have any to bring colored pencils. So connect your dots, and this is what we call a translation. Okay, we are basically just taking a shape and moving it. And that's it for number 1. Okay, we're going to get into like some technical math stuff in the next couple weeks, but for today we are literally just tracing and moving our pictures. And that's it. Okay? So now let's do the same thing for number 2. Okay? Obviously you're not going to use the same corner. So you don't have to use the corners of the patty paper. I like to, but you can use the edges, you can use the middle. Does not matter where you put this, okay? So for this one, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw an arrow so I know that this is how my picture looked when it was facing straight up. Okay, and then trace your picture. And I like to make like dots at the corners because we know that we're going to have to connect those dots, so it's really helpful if you make dots at the corners. Okay, and then move it off to the side. Then we're going to have to pick where we're going to move this from. So should we count from the left, like the top or the bottom, and then the left or the right? You guys can help me pick. The top, so the top right, does that work? Okay, so make sure when we line up our figure, it's going to be top right, okay? So if you want to, you can make a little dot so it helps you remember which one you move from. Okay, and 1 inch up and 1 inch to the right. So from our top corner, we're going to make a dot 1 inch up. Make a dot. And then from that dot, you're going to go 1 inch to the right. Hopefully we all know our left and right. If you forget, use your hands. You guys know that trick, right?
Yeah.
You don't know that trick? Watch. If you put your hands like this. Look, I'll even show it on the video. Put your hands like this. If you put your hands like this and put your thumbs out like that, your left hand makes an L.
Whoa.
Mind blown, some of you right now.
Oh my God.
Okay, your left hand makes an L. That's how we teach my 4-year-old the difference between left and right, because she knows her letters. So, left hand makes an L. See? Looking at you. Now, if you turn your hands this way, you're totally messed up, but you have to look at the back of your hands. So you have to look at the back of your hands. Don't look at your palms, because that's going to mess you up. Look at the back of your hands. Left hand makes an L. That's why I said don't look at that side, Fabio. Great. Okay, so left, you move the other way. We're moving to the right. I have no special trick for your hand and knowing it's the right. Okay, then pick up your patty paper. So we knew that this was facing up, and remember I'm moving from the top right, so put the top right dot right there and poke through. Make our corner dots. So just do your best to make our nice dark corner dots. And like I said, some pencils seem to work better than others for this, and I really don't know why. Usually sharp pencils work really well for this. And then once you have your dots, and I only have one. Once you have your 4 corners, you can use your ruler and connect your dots. This is why it's nice to have a different color if you have a different, a colored pencil or something, because then you can tell like where you started and where you're going to. Okay, so these two are called translations, and translations, like I said earlier, are literally where you take a whole shape and you pick it up and you move it. Okay, so pick up a whole shape and move it. Are we good to number 1 and 2? Anyone still going? Okay, next thing we're going to do is something called a rotation, or I'm sorry, a reflection. My bad. Reflection. Okay, and a reflection, what I think of it when I talk about reflections is like looking in a mirror. So you're reflecting an image, okay? We're going to do that, but this line is basically going to be our mirror, okay? So the way to do that is you put your patty paper down, okay? And we're going to trace our shape, but you're also going to trace this dotted line. Okay, so just trace the dotted line. And I'm going to put my arrow so I know that this was the way it was when it was facing up. And then make your corners. So trace my triangle. Okay. And then take it away. Now, a reflection means literally if you look in the mirror, it gives it right back at you. So what we're gonna do is after you trace this, you're gonna pick up your patty paper and you're literally gonna flip it over. Okay, so flip it over, and then you still want it facing up, excuse me, but we're going to trace this on the other side, okay? So you want to line up the dotted lines. Line up the dotted lines, and then draw your corners. So poke through the patty paper. Make your corner dots. And then once you have your 3 corner dots, connect them with lines. So connect them with your ruler. Who said I'm so confused? Who's so confused? What are we confused about? No, seriously, like, do you need help or are you just being...
No, I need help.
With what? Like, what were you confused about?
The triangle.
Okay, so draw your triangle. Did you draw your triangle? Like, trace it. So first trace your triangle and the line.
I did it.
Then pick it up and flip it over and line up the dotted line. It's called a reflection, and then trace or make your corners and then connect the dots.
I like it a lot.
I'm glad that you like that. So that's called a reflection. So basically, if this was a mirror right here, this is reflected across that line. Okay, that's called reflected across that line. This is like art math today. Math art. Yes.
Are we going to do all the problems?
Yes, we're going to do all the problems. It's just one side. Okay, now let's do the same thing here on number 4. Okay, number 4 again. Draw your dotted line with your patty paper, because that's your reflection line. Okay, this one's going to be a little different because it's a little more complicated. Okay, so draw your, I don't know what kind of shape that is. Oh, it's kind of like an abstract heart for Valentine's Day. It's a little abstract, but okay, make sure you know which way it was facing up. And then once you've drawn that, flip over your paper and then line up the dots. And then make your corners. Make your corners, and once you've gotten all your dots, you can connect your dots. I do? I'm laughing at you. Guys are funny today. And connect your dots. And then you can see what it would look like. This is called a reflection. So if you reflected it across that line. Oh, sorry, you can't even see it. So if that line was a mirror, that's how that shape would look in the mirror. I have lots of this patty paper, okay, but I have enough that I can give you like 1 per lesson. So, I mean, you don't have to be like super conservative with the patty paper. But, I mean, you can use it, but try not to, you know, waste it, please. Okay, so these are called reflections. So a translation was when we picked up a whole shape and moved it. A reflection is when it, like, flips over something or you see back the image. And then this last one is something called a rotation. Okay, a rotation. These are probably the most complicated ones on this paper. Okay, so again, we're just gonna find our shape, and I want you to trace this shape. Okay, so we're gonna trace this shape. You also are going to trace this line, okay? So I want you to put this dot where A is and label it. Trace the line, put a dot where B is and label it, and then I also want you to trace the shape. What kind of shape is this?
A pentagon.
A pentagon, because it has 5 sides. You know that. And then this was going up. So trace that shape. Now, this one's going to be a little bit more complicated because it says draw the image when each pentagon is turned until AB passes through C. Sounds a little complicated, but it's not that bad. Okay, I want you to, after you've traced it, take your pencil or your eraser, it doesn't really matter, and I want you to like place it where A is. So hold it where A is. So hold your patty paper on your paper. So like hold the edge, hold the corner where A is. Then we're going to take our patty paper and you're going to rotate. You're just going to pick up the patty paper and you're going to turn it all the way until that line. See how I'm turning it? Like, so my pencil's just holding it in place. You're going to turn it all the way until that line goes through point C. Okay, and you should be able to see it like that. Point C. Then put your hand back on your patty paper, okay, to hold it down. And then we're going to draw our shape. So make your corners. That's called rotating. Okay, that's a rotation because we're going to rotate around a point. Okay, so rotation is just turning. And then make your edges or your dots. And then once you've made your dots, you can connect them. So just push really hard to make those dots. So you're actually making holes in the patty paper. Suck at this today. And then connect the dots. Okay, so this is called a rotation. So basically this pentagon, we rotated around point A and it flipped all the way around to get to look like this. And then once you're done with that one, you're going to do the exact same thing with number 6. Okay? 6 is a little bit more complicated because we're rotating like a little bit farther away, but it's still the same concept, okay? Take this. Mark which way is up. Mark point A and draw your line. And then draw your edges. So draw your pentagon. You always want to mark, like put points at those edges so it's easier to connect your dots. Okay, so once you draw that, or once you trace it, take your pencil, or it works with your eraser, but I think it's easier with your pencil, like the end of your pencil. And this way we're going to keep rotating it. Now, it doesn't really matter if you rotate to the left or to the right. You're still going to get to the same thing. So I rotate all the way around to the right until that line goes through C. This one's a little bit farther away, so you would imagine that, like, okay, that line, if I had made it a little longer, would go through point C. And then draw your edges or make your dots.
I'm using this paper since they already have the holes. This my pencil won't work with the holes.
I don't know if that one has the holes, but you could try it. And you always kind of want to just like keep this on the edge, so hold it down and then like check your dots, like, oh, my dots aren't quite dark enough. And then once you have your dots, you can, and if your dots are really faint, like you can just kind of make them darker once you pick up your patty paper. And then connect your dots. and connect them. Okay, so basically over the next 2 weeks, we are going to spend time doing all of these. Okay, but basically it's going to be translations, where you pick up and move something, reflections, where we flip it across an axis or like a mirror, and a rotation, where we turn things. Now, if we look at these questions, it says, for which exercises, if any, did the size of the original figure change? Did the size change for any of these? No. So none of them. Okay, just write none. You can write a whole sentence if you feel like it, but just none is fine for me. Oh, let me make this smaller so you can actually see it. The B question says, for which exercises, if any, did the actual shape of the original one change? None of them. None of them changed shape. And for which exercises, if any, did the orientation of the original figure change? The orientation means like the way it was facing. So when I drew my little up-down arrow, which of them changed? Did these ones change? No. Did these ones change? No. These are still like facing upwards kind of. Did these change though? These definitely changed, so just write rotation. So when you rotate something, the orientation or like up changes. Okay, the direction that it was facing. And that's it. Okay, so that's just kind of an introduction to what we're going to be working on next. Does anyone have any questions?